The silence in our living room was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. It pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Just moments before, we'd been having the most mundane argument of our 10-year marriage. It was about finances, about whether we should splurge on a trip to Italy or continue saving aggressively for a bigger house. It was the kind of boring domestic squabble that punctuated a comfortable life. Then, Chloe had snapped. Her voice, usually so melodic, had cracked like a whip in the quiet space. "You just don't get it, do you, Liam?" she'd yelled, her face pale, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I'd stood there, bewildered. "Get what, Chloe? It's just a vacation. We can go next year." Her laughter was sharp, brittle, and utterly devoid of humor. It was a sound I'd never heard from her before, and it chilled me to the bone. "The vacation," she repeated, her voice dripping with a decade of unspoken venom. "You think this is about a vacation?" She took a ragged breath, and the words that followed were the wrecking ball that demolished the entire architecture of my life. "I never wanted to marry you. I've always wanted him." Time seemed to warp. The grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from her parents, ticked with agonizing slowness. Each tick was a hammer blow against my skull. "Him?" The word was a dry whisper, a ghost of a question. My mind was a frantic, blank slate. Him who? Her boss? An old college flame? The names flickered and died before they could fully form. There was no him. There couldn't be. We were Liam and Chloe, the steady couple, the ones everyone looked up to. We had built a life, a home, a future. Her words were impossible. "Who, Chloe?" I asked again, my voice stronger this time, laced with a cold dread that was beginning to solidify in my gut. "Who were you talking about?" She just shook her head, tears finally spilling from her eyes and tracing paths through her makeup. "It doesn't matter," she sobbed, turning away from me. "It's too late. It's always been too late." But it did matter. It was the only thing that mattered. Her confession had recontextualized every moment of our life together. Every anniversary dinner, every shared smile, every "I love you" was now suspect, tainted by the shadow of this mysterious him. The next few days were a waking nightmare. We moved through our house like ghosts, occupying the same space but existing in different dimensions. The air was thick with things unsaid. I tried to talk to her, to understand, but she was a fortress. She would either retreat into stony silence or dissolve into tears, refusing to give me the name that was haunting my every waking thought. Sleep offered no escape. My dreams were filled with faceless men stealing my wife away. My mind, desperate for an answer, became a detective's office. I started digging. It felt dirty, a violation of the trust I thought we'd had. But her words had already shattered that trust into a million pieces. I started with her phone. I waited until she was in the shower, my heart pounding a guilty rhythm against my ribs, and scrolled through her texts and call logs. Nothing. It was all her sister, her mom, work colleagues. Her social media was equally clean, filled with pictures of us, of our life, pictures of a lie. This lack of evidence was almost worse. It meant she was either telling the truth and had been incredibly careful, or she was lying to hurt me in the most profound way possible. I didn't know which was worse. My paranoia grew, latching onto every male name she mentioned. Was it Mark from her office? David from her yoga class? I started replaying years of conversations, searching for a clue, a slip-up, a hint of something I had missed. It was maddening. My search for the truth led me to the attic, a dusty repository of our shared history. I was looking for old journals, letters, anything from the time before we were married. I pulled down boxes filled with college memorabilia, photo albums, and forgotten trinkets. In a large wooden chest under a pile of old blankets, I found it. It wasn't a journal. It was a small, shoebox-sized container labeled Memories. Inside, beneath old concert tickets and dried flowers, was a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. They weren't addressed to me. My hands trembled as I untied the ribbon. The letters were in Chloe's elegant script, written on stationery that I recognized from her college days. And they were all addressed to Ethan. Ethan, my best friend, my brother in all but blood. The man who had stood beside me at my wedding as my best man. The man whose toast had been about our unbreakable bond and how perfect Chloe and I were for each other. The blood drained from my face. It couldn't be. Not him. Not Ethan. I sank to the dusty floor of the attic, the letters clutched in my hand. I read the first one. It was dated a week before our engagement. She wrote of her love for him, of her confusion. She wrote about how my proposal felt like a deadline, a final door closing on the possibility of them. She described me as safe and kind, a good man she knew she should want, but not the one her heart truly belonged to. Each word was a fresh stab of betrayal. I read on, my vision blurring with tears. Letter after letter detailed her secret, agonizing love for him. She wrote about seeing him at our wedding, how standing at the altar with me while he watched from the side was the hardest thing she'd ever done. She confessed to hoping, for years, that he would step in, that he would tell her to leave me, that he would fight for her. But he never did. These weren't letters she'd sent. They were a diary of her heart, a testament to a love she had nurtured in the shadows of our marriage. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. The way Ethan would sometimes get quiet and withdrawn when we were all together. The lingering glances between him and Chloe that I had always dismissed as simple friendship. The time he'd gotten too drunk at our 5th anniversary party and told me I was a lucky man, in a tone that wasn't celebratory but mournful. I had been a fool, a blind, trusting fool. The rage came then, a white-hot wave that eclipsed the pain. It was a pure, primal fury. I had been living a lie, a supporting character in a tragic romance that wasn't my own. My best friend and my wife. The two people I loved and trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the most fundamental way imaginable. I walked down from the attic, the letters in my hand. Chloe was in the kitchen, staring blankly out the window. She turned as I entered, her eyes red and swollen. I didn't say a word. I just dropped the letters on the kitchen island between us. Recognition, then horror, then a deep, soul-crushing shame washed over her face. She looked from the letters to me, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. "Liam," she finally whispered. "I'm calling him," I said, my voice eerily calm. "He needs to be here for this." Ethan arrived 20 minutes later, a worried look on his face. "Liam, you sounded weird on the phone. Is everything okay? Is Chloe all right?" He stopped dead when he saw the letters on the island and the look on my face. The color drained from his cheeks. He knew. "For 10 years, I began, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. For 10 years, I called you my brother. You stood next to me while I married the woman you were in love with. You celebrated my anniversaries. You ate at my table. You held my trust in your hands, and you let it rot." I turned to Chloe. "And you said yes. You walked down that aisle. You built a home with me, a life with me, all while you were writing these. All while you were waiting for him. You didn't just lie to me, Chloe. You stole a decade of my life. You let me invest my entire soul into a marriage that was a placeholder for you." Chloe was openly sobbing now. "I did love you, Liam. In my own way, I did. I tried. I really tried to be happy. "Don't," I snapped, the sound echoing in the kitchen. "Don't you dare try to soften this. Don't you dare try to salvage any piece of this. You loved the security I gave you. You loved the life we had. But you didn't love me. Not in the way that matters. Not when you were pining for him the entire time." I looked at Ethan, who couldn't meet my eyes. "And you," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous low. "Why? Why not just tell me? Why let me do it? Why be my best man?" He finally looked up, his face a portrait of misery. "I was a coward," he choked out. "I loved her, but I was scared. You were stable. You had a plan. I had nothing. I thought I was doing the right thing by letting her go, by letting her be happy with you. I thought the feelings would fade." "But they didn't, did they?" I asked, the question a final bitter confirmation. He shook his head slowly. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a life ending. The life of Liam and Chloe. The life of Liam and Ethan. It was all gone, turned to ash by a secret that had festered for a decade. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The pain was immense, a physical ache in my chest, but the confusion was gone. I saw them for who they were, two weak people who had built their lives on a foundation of cowardice and deceit, with my happiness as the collateral damage. I took off my wedding ring and placed it gently on the counter, next to the letters. "I want you both out of my house," I said, my voice steady. "The divorce papers will be sent to your mother's, Chloe. Ethan, I never want to see you again." There was no more yelling, no more crying. Just a quiet finality. They left. I stood alone in the kitchen, in the house that was no longer a home, and I didn't fall apart. The betrayal was a deep, cavernous wound, but in its place, a cold, hard resolve was beginning to form. Months later, the divorce was finalized. I sold the house, unable to stomach the ghosts of memories that were now all lies. I moved into a small apartment downtown and focused on myself. I reconnected with old friends, threw myself into my work, and started hiking on the weekends, finding a quiet peace in the solitude of nature. It wasn't easy. There were nights the grief was overwhelming. But with each passing day, I felt less like a victim and more like a survivor. One evening, about a year later, I saw them. I was walking home from a late dinner with colleagues and saw them across the street, walking out of a restaurant. They weren't holding hands. They were arguing. Their faces were tight with frustration and unhappiness. And in that moment, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even pity. They were just two strangers. They had gotten what they always wanted, and it was clear it hadn't brought them the happiness they'd sacrificed everything for. I turned and walked away, a small, genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in a long time. They hadn't destroyed my life. They had only destroyed the lie we were living. My real life was just beginning.